You didn't stumble here by mistake. Something inside you, something quiet but steady, brought you here. Maybe it's a whisper, a tension you can't name, a pull toward something ancient, something calm. In a world that talks too loud, where urgency is mistaken for importance and distraction feels like home. You came looking for wisdom, not trendy advice, not noise, but truth that endures. There's a reason the words of Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus have survived centuries, not because they were emperors or philosophers, but because they knew how to stay steady in storms. They wrote not for fame, but for clarity, for peace. So today, you begin a journey through 10 Stoic insights, each one a quote, yes, but more than that, a path back to the part of you that doesn't get shaken so easily. A return to calm, to discipline, to strength that doesn't need to shout. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Let that be your compass today. Let it echo quietly as we walk together. And if something here steadies you, if even one sentence feels like home, subscribe. Not for numbers, but so when the world starts spinning again, you'll know exactly where to return. We begin now. Number 1, guard the gate of thought. You wake up, and the thoughts arrive before your feet touch the floor. Sometimes they're calm, other times they rush in like a crowd at the gates. You think about the message you haven't answered, the thing you said yesterday, the future you can't control. But keep trying to. But what if you paused? Right there. What if you chose your thoughts instead of letting them choose you? Epictetus once said, it's not events that disturb people, it's their judgments about them. That's not just philosophy, that's power, because it means you are not a puppet tied to what happens outside. You are the gatekeeper, and your first responsibility is what you let in. Imagine your mind as a garden. Every thought is a seed. Some grow into calm focus, others into anxiety, resentment, or confusion. If you don't choose which ones to water the weeds, the loudest thoughts will take over. So how do you guard the gate? Start with awareness. When something triggers you, a rude message, a delay, an unexpected change, don't react. Label it. Say quietly in your mind, that's a thought. That's a judgment, not a fact, not a command. This practice, it's like stepping back from a mirror that used to be pressed against your face. You gain room, perspective. You stop being fused with your reaction. And when you have space, you have choice. And that's where your freedom lives. Let's say you hear bad news, a deal falls through. You don't have to jump into despair. You can ask, what am I telling myself about this? Am I adding fear to the facts? Am I predicting failure that hasn't even arrived? Here's how to try it practically right now. 1. Think of one situation you're overthinking. 2. Write down the raw facts. No emotion, no story, just what happened. 3. Then write your thoughts about it, your interpretation. 4. Finally ask, is this the only way to see it? You'll often find it's not. There's another door, another angle, one that leaves you lighter, not heavier. Let's bring this down to nature for a moment. Think of a mountain lake. On the surface, ripples, wind, maybe even a storm. But beneath that, stillness, clarity. The mountain doesn't panic in the storm. It lets the surface shift, but the depth remains untouched. You can be that mountain. You don't have to fight the wind, just don't follow it. You don't have to believe every thought, just observe it. You don't have to fix every feeling, just feel it fully and let it pass. This isn't denial, it's discipline. It's the kind of inner order that replaces reactivity with reflection. So ask yourself now, gently, what thought have I let rule me this week without questioning it? Let that question sit with you. Not to create guilt, but clarity. Because the moment you see the thought, you begin to unchain yourself from it. You are not your worries. You are not your emotions. You are the watcher, and the watcher holds the key. So next time your mind begins its restless chatter, pause, breathe, step back, and remember, you are the gate. You decide what enters. And with that awareness, peace isn't far behind. Number 2, choose the view from above. You're overwhelmed. Deadlines feel like cliffs. Messages pile up. Someone said something maybe it wasn't meant to hurt, but it echoes anyway. And in moments like this, you shrink. You collapse inward. Everything feels personal. Everything feels urgent. But what if you could rise, not escape, not ignore, but lift your gaze just a little? Marcus Aurelius reminds us. Watch the stars in their courses and imagine yourself running alongside them. He wasn't being poetic for poetry's sake. He was describing a practice to step above the storm, to see yourself, your life, your stress, from a higher place. This is what Stoics called the view from above. It's not detachment in a cold way. It's perspective. It's rising far enough to see that the thing bothering you may not be as heavy as it feels from the ground. Imagine an eagle soaring above a mountain range. From the forest floor, a fallen tree seems massive, unpassable. But from the eagle's view, it's a dot, part of a larger picture. When you choose the view from above, you stop measuring your life by the moment. You stop mistaking an inconvenience for a catastrophe. That comment that ruined your day is just noise in the wind. That rejection, one thread in a much longer story. You standing in line impatient, you stuck in traffic cursing the delay. Zoom out. You're a human on a spinning planet in a galaxy of stars, not to make you feel small, but to free you, because when you realize how big everything is, you stop letting small things shrink your peace. Here's how to practice it. When you feel tension rising, pause. Close your eyes if you can, and imagine yourself lifting slowly above the room you're in, above your house, your city, your country. Look down at yourself, a dot among billions, a life, a moment, a thought, and then breathe. You'll find your shoulders unclench, your breath deepens, and the thing that seemed like the whole world begins to shrink back to its real size. This practice isn't an escape, it's a recalibration. It reminds you, you're allowed to care, but you don't have to collapse. Marcus Aurelius used to write in his journal, not to impress others, but to bring himself back to this scale, the scale of eternity, the scale where ego dissolves and only truth remains. So ask yourself, what am I blowing out of proportion today, simply because I'm too close to it? Let that question slow you down. Let it lift you. Let it dissolve urgency. The Stoics weren't cold, they were clear. They knew suffering grows in narrow rooms. But when you open the window, even a crack, you let in the sky. And that sky is always there, above your stress, above your story, above you, waiting to hold you when you rise. So next time life presses in, rise, look down gently. And remember, from above, you can see the path. You can see the peace, and most importantly, you can see yourself clearly again. Number 3, turn obstacles into path. You feel stuck. Something didn't go as planned. The path ahead blocked, and part of you wants to resist, to complain, to quit. But deep down, another voice whispers, what if this isn't the end of the path? What if this is the path Marcus Aurelius wrote? The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. He wasn't just offering comfort, he was offering strategy. The Stoics believed obstacles aren't interruptions of the journey, they are the journey. They are life teaching you in real time. When things go wrong, most people freeze. They wait for the storm to pass. But the Stoic learns to walk in the rain not because they love discomfort, but because they trust what it builds. Imagine a river stone thrown into rushing water again and again. At first it's jagged, but over time the current smooths it. The stone doesn't resist the water, it's shaped by it. It becomes something new. You are that stone, and life will keep flowing. The question is, will you let it shape you or break you? Let's talk practically. You face a setback. A job falls through, someone lets you down, your plan collapses. The first instinct is frustration, maybe even self-pity. You think, why me? But the Stoic asks, how is this helping me grow? That's not toxic positivity. It's radical responsibility. It's saying, I don't choose everything that happens, but I do choose what I do with it. Here's how to shift your mind when facing an obstacle. 1. Pause. Don't react right away. Let the emotion pass through. 2. Write it down. Describe the obstacle clearly and calmly. 3. Flip it. Ask, what skill is this testing in me? What virtue is this inviting me to practice? 4. Act. Don't wait for perfect. Just take the next strong step. Over time, this becomes your muscle. The obstacle becomes familiar. You stop fearing it. You start working with it. Seneca said it best. Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. And he lived it. Exiled, betrayed, watched his wealth disappear. But he kept writing, kept teaching, kept walking forward. So ask yourself today, what challenge am I treating as a wall that might actually be a doorway? Let that question change your lens, because once it does, nothing can stop you. Not traffic, not failure, not betrayal, not delay. They all become part of the training, part of the sculpting, part of what makes you strong without needing to look strong. And that's what Stoicism offers, not a life without problems, but a way to see problems as invitations, to show courage, to act wisely, to keep going when others sit down. Look at your life right now, that thing in your way. What if it's not blocking your path, but pointing toward your next level? What if it's not punishment, but preparation? What if this moment you dread is the one that turns you into who you were meant to become? Let it sharpen you. Let it mold you. Let it make you more than you were. The river will keep flowing, so stand in it, face it, and walk forward, not despite the obstacle, but because of it. Number 4, live by the inner scorecard. You post something online, and you wait, not just for the comments, but for confirmation. Did they like it? Did they see it? Do they still see you? We all do this, even when we know better, even when we've told ourselves not to care, because somewhere along the way, we learn to measure our worth in echoes, not in essence. But the Stoics ask you to turn inward, to silence the applause, and listen for something quieter, something steadier. Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. That's a hard ask, but it's also freedom. Because when you stop performing for others, you start living for something real, your own principles, your own standards, your own peace. Picture a man running on a treadmill. He's sweating, pushing, exhausted, but he's not getting anywhere because the approval he chases moves faster the closer he gets. Now, picture another man walking a quiet path in the woods. He's not being watched, but every step is his. Grounded, chosen. Which one are you? Living by an inner scorecard means you stop outsourcing your self-worth. You define what matters to you: honesty, kindness, courage, discipline, and then you check in with you, not with your followers, not with your boss, not with the passing judgment of strangers. This doesn't mean becoming arrogant or isolated. It means anchoring yourself. So when the winds of opinion blow, you stay upright. Seneca reminds us what is disgraceful is not that others think badly of us, but that we do. So here's a simple nightly ritual. Before sleep, ask yourself 3 questions. 1. Did I act in alignment with my values today? 2. Did I let someone else's opinion control me? 3. What would I do differently if I were the only one watching? You'll start noticing something, a shift, Less tension, more clarity, less performance, more presence. The inner scorecard doesn't scream, it doesn't trend, it doesn't hand out trophies, but it gives you something better: integrity. The feeling of walking through your day without needing to look over your shoulder. You know this feeling, that quiet pride, when you kept your word, even when no one saw, when you said no, even when yes would have pleased the crowd. When you walked away, even though staying would have been easier, you felt it, and it stayed with you. So ask yourself gently, whose scoreboard have I been playing on today? And if the answer isn't yours, that's okay. This moment right now is your reset. You don't need the world's permission to live by your own truth. You just need the courage to begin. The next time you hesitate, wondering if people will approve, pause. Return inward and ask, will I approve of myself when the day is over? Because in the quiet of your own mind, that's the voice that matters most. And when you begin to trust that voice, the noise around you fades. The opinions soften and your path becomes your own again. So walk it, not for claps, not for views, but for the kind of peace that only self-respect can give. Number 5, prepare the mind each dawn. The day hasn't started yet, but already your mind is busy, anticipating, rushing, bracing. Even before the sun rises, your thoughts run ahead of you to your schedule, your inbox, the tension you'll have to manage, the faces you'll have to greet. But what if you slowed down just for a moment? What if instead of letting the day happen to you, you met it with calm, steady eyes? Marcus Aurelius wrote, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, surrogate, dishonest, jealous, and surly. It sounds harsh, but it's not bitterness, it's preparation. The Stoics didn't believe in being caught off guard. They believed in mental rehearsal, in putting on inner armor before walking into battle, not to fight the world, but to walk through it unshaken. You wouldn't climb a mountain without checking your ropes. You wouldn't step into a storm without a coat. So why walk into your day without preparing your mind? This is what they called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of misfortunes, not to worry, but to steady yourself. It's like setting your spine before lifting a weight. It's like laying out tools before you build. So how do you do it? Start with 5 minutes before the phone, before the rush. Just you, your breath, and your day ahead. Close your eyes, picture the hours unfolding. The delay that might frustrate you, the rude comment, the unexpected task, the noise, the silence. Now see yourself meeting it all. Calmly, not because it's easy, but because you decided to be ready. This is your mental armor, and it's lighter than anxiety, stronger than panic. Imagine a sailor checking his compass at dawn. The waters ahead may be rough, but he's anchored. He knows which direction matters. You can do the same. Not to predict every problem, but to remind yourself, you've faced hard days before and you're still here. So let's build a simple Stoic morning ritual. 1. Name the likely frictions, not to dread them, to greet them first. 2. State your response. If someone's unkind, I'll remain kind. If I'm delayed, I'll stay calm. 3. Anchor to a quote. Choose one Stoic phrase to carry with you like a pebble in your pocket. 4. Breathe. Settle into that intention. Let it take root. This isn't about control. It's about readiness, because the day will bring what it brings. But how you meet it, that's always yours. Epictetus reminds us, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. You already know what kind of person you want to be. You've glimpsed them in your best moments, calm, composed, unshaken by the noise. This morning, practice. It's how you meet that version of you and invite them to stay. So tomorrow morning, before anything else, give yourself 5 minutes to remember who you are, to remember what matters, to remember that nothing outside can break you unless you hand it the key. Ask yourself now, what's one thing I can expect tomorrow, and how will I meet it? Let the answer live with you. Let it rise with the sun. Let it become your quiet, steady shield, and walk into your day not braced, but grounded, not armored in tension, but wrapped in intention. Because when you greet the day with clarity, you don't need to control the world. You just need to control your approach, and that makes all the difference. Number 6, accept, then act. Something unexpected happens. Plans collapse, people disappoint. Life turns. And the first instinct is resistance. No, not this. This shouldn't be happening. This isn't fair. But in that moment of protest, you give your power away. You start fighting reality instead of working with it. Epictetus said, "Seek not for events to happen as you wish, but wish for events to happen as they do, and your life will flow smoothly." This isn't about being passive, it's about being prepared. It's the difference between being swept by the tide and learning to swim with it. Acceptance to the Stoic isn't surrender, it's alignment. It's saying, this happened. Now, what will I do with it? Picture a stalled car. It won't move until you place your feet firmly on the ground. Only then can you push. Only then do you gain traction. You can't change what you refuse to acknowledge. But the moment you accept, you reclaim motion. You reclaim clarity. Here's a simple 3-part process to live this one. Breathe. When something unexpected shakes, you pause. One deep breath, then another. Let the wave pass. 2, name the fact. Say it clearly. This happened. No story, no judgment, just the truth. 3, choose your next move. Not from panic, but from presence. Given this, what's my best step now? Bottom, that's how the Stoic moves forward. Not with denial, not with drama, but with decision. Marcus Aurelius reminds us how ridiculous and how strange to be surprised at anything which happens in life. He wasn't cynical, he was wise. He knew life isn't supposed to be smooth, it's supposed to be real. And real life is messy, unpredictable, hard, beautiful. When you accept first, you waste no energy on arguing with reality. You get straight to the part that matters, your response. And that response is your freedom. So many people stay stuck not because of the event, but because of their resistance to it. They replay it, retell it, resent it, but none of that moves the needle. Only action does. And action rooted in clear acceptance is unstoppable. Imagine a tree hit by wind. The weak ones crack, the strong ones bend. They give just enough and remain rooted. You can be that tree, not rigid, not passive, but resilient. So when the unexpected comes, and it will, don't ask why me, ask now that this has happened. What will I do with it? That question changes everything. It turns victims into leaders. It turns panic into progress. It turns breakdowns into breakthroughs. This is how you train your mind. This is how you become emotionally unshakable, not because life stops hurting, but because you stop wasting time resisting a hurt. You use it, you shape it, you let it shape you. So ask yourself right now, what am I still fighting that I need to accept? Let the answer rise. Don't rush it, and when it comes, greet it like an old friend. Not with defeat, but with quiet readiness. Then act, even if the step is small, even if it's imperfect. Because the Stoic doesn't wait for perfect conditions. They meet the moment, they trust their steps, and they walk forward again and again and again. So today, what will you accept? And once you do, what's your next strong step? Number 7, Memento Mori, Memento Vivere. You think you have time to say what you mean, to start what you've delayed, to become who you know you're meant to be. But time doesn't ask for your permission. It moves quietly whether you notice or not. The Stoics faced this truth head on, not to scare themselves, but to wake themselves up. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. This isn't morbid. This is freedom, because when you remember death, you remember to live. The practice is called Memento Mori, remember you will die. It sounds harsh, but it's a lens. It strips away the noise, the petty arguments, the endless waiting, and it brings you here to the present where life is actually happening. Imagine walking through a field at dawn. The grass is still wet, the air is crisp, and on every blade of grass, a drop of dew shimmering, beautiful, gone by noon. That's life, yours, mine, everyone's, not endless, but luminous, so when seen clearly. The Stoics knew this. That's why they rehearsed their death daily, not to become fearful, but to become urgent, purposeful, grateful. Seneca reminds us, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. So ask yourself, what are you postponing that matters deeply to you? The conversation, the apology, the project, the truth. You don't have to do it all today, but you do have to begin. Because waiting for the right time is just another way of saying, I'm pretending I'll live forever. Let's change that. Here's a practice to keep this awareness close, but gentle one. Each morning, say softly, I may not finish this day. Let it sharpen, not scare you. 2. Each night ask if today had been my last. Would I be proud of how I lived it? Let the answer guide tomorrow. 3. Each week choose one thing you've delayed and take a step. Any step, small is fine, but do not stay still. You'll notice something surprising. You'll stop chasing what doesn't matter. You'll stop scrolling endlessly. You'll stop arguing about things you won't remember in 5 years. Instead, you'll start looking people in the eyes. You'll say, I love you more often. You'll take walks without your phone. You'll feel the sun on your skin like it's the first time, and that is how you live. To remember death is to honor life, not with fear, but with fierce presence. Memento Mori isn't a grim shadow. It's a candle, lighting the path you've been waiting to walk. And paired with it is this Memento Vivere, remember to live. Not someday, not when things settle, not when you're less busy, now. This breath, this heartbeat, this conversation. So ask yourself gently but firmly, if this were my last season of life, how would I live it? What would you say more often? What would you release? What would you forgive? What would you finally start? Because the truth is, every day could be your last, and one day it will be. But until then, you have this moment, this chance, this life. So live it wide awake, live it fully, live it now. Number 8, practice voluntary simplicity. Comfort feels good until it begins to own you. We build lives padded with convenience, soft beds, fast food, instant entertainment, endless scrolling. But at what cost? At some point, ease becomes weakness. Luxury becomes dependency. And we lose the ability to sit with stillness, to endure discomfort, to stand on our own. The Stoics understood this trap. They didn't wait for life to test them. They trained themselves in advance to need less so they could be more. Seneca wrote, set aside a certain number of days during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, asking yourself all the while, is this the condition that I feared? It wasn't self-punishment, it was self-mastery. Because once you know you can go without, you're no longer a prisoner of your possessions. Imagine walking barefoot on stone, not because you have to, but because you choose to. Not forever, just enough to remember what you're made of. That's what voluntary simplicity is, a decision to step away briefly from comfort, to build your strength, to sharpen your gratitude, to reclaim your clarity. We confuse more with better, more screens, more likes, more features, more stuff, but often less is where peace hides. The Stoics practiced this in small daily ways, fasting from rich foods to test discipline. Sleeping without a pillow to train resilience. Wearing simple clothes to loosen ego. Not forever, but often enough to stay grounded. You can do the same It doesn't have to be dramatic. Try this one. Choose one day per week. Simplify it. Eat plainly. Use your phone less. Walk instead of drive. Listen instead of speak. 2. Set one discomfort challenge. Take a cold shower. Skip a meal. Wake before sunrise. 3. Notice your thoughts. Do they panic? Do they reach for distraction? Good. That's where your work begins. Because once you make peace with discomfort, you stop fearing it. And that is real power. Picture a warrior, not flashy, not loud, just prepared. They've trained in heat. They've trained in hunger. They've trained in silence. So when life tests them, they don't flinch. They act. You can be that warrior, not by chasing hardship, but by choosing small challenges deliberately, repeatedly, wisely. This is how you become unshakable, not through comfort, but through contrast. Seneca again reminds us a man is wealthy if he has learned to be content with little. Ask yourself now, when was the last time I tested what I truly need? Not what you want, not what's expected, but what's essential. There's a strange joy in simplicity, a clarity. You feel lighter, faster, more awake. Suddenly the noise fades, and in its place, you hear your own voice again. This practice doesn't make life easier, but it makes you stronger, less reactive, less entitled, more alive. So take a day, try less, feel more, observe what rises, and walk through it, not with resistance, but with quiet curiosity. Because the Stoic path isn't paved in gold. It's worn smooth by discipline, by choices no one sees, by strength that doesn't depend on applause. Choose less, not to suffer, but to remember that you already have enough, that you already are enough, and when you no longer fear discomfort, you are ready for anything. You've walked through 8 teachings, 8 reflections, 8 quiet truths, passed down across centuries, not shouted, not soul, but whispered from one steady soul to another. And now we return to where we began. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. Marcus Aurelius. This was our first spark, and maybe, just maybe, it feels different now. Not just like a quote, but a reminder. Because this is what Stoicism is, not cold, not emotionless, but centered, rooted, present. And in a world that spins louder by the day, you have a choice. Let the chaos in, or return to the still point inside you. You know what happens if you don't. You've lived it. You felt yourself pulled by every comment, every delay, every flicker of comparison. But now you know the way back. It's paved with breath, with pause, with practice. And though it may not always be easy, it will always be worth it. So take one thing from this journey, one quote, one question, one ritual, and carry it with you tomorrow, not to impress, not to perform, but to remember. Remember who you are beneath the noise, beneath the roles, beneath the rush. You are steady, you are still, you are ready. And if this brought you calm, if it helped you see more clearly, subscribe, so that next time life begins to shake, you'll know where to return, right here, where the ancient meets the now, and the voice is your own.